Would you like to help your son enter the world prepared?
In this episode, we look at how Joseph lived in but not of the world, and how your son can too.
Thou shalt love the Lord thy God. These words shall be in thine heart.
Teach them diligently unto thy children.
Talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way.
Bind them for a sign upon thine hand.
They shall be as frontlets between thine eyes.
Write them upon the posts of thy house.
This is Families of Faith.
Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of Families of Faith, where my wife Stacey and I look at marriage and parenting topics from a biblical perspective. And we're glad that you've joined us today. What's our topic today, Stacey?
Yeah, we're calling it the Joseph Challenge. Last time we did the Esther Challenge. So this time we're focusing on sons and helping them launch into the world, whether it's their first job or first opportunity where they're really around a lot of influences, to be able to stand for the Lord.
And we made this point repeatedly in the last episode, and we'll probably do it again today. This is not a one-time conversation that you have and then your son is ready to go, right? This is kind of summarizing what hopefully has been taking place for many years as your son has been growing in your household and preparing to sooner or later start stepping out on his own.
Yes, very good point. It should not be the only conversation, but it can be a special conversation. And that's what we're suggesting that you can do with your son if you wish, is to basically walk through a little Bible study and then have really good discussion about how they can live in the world, but not of the world, just like Joseph did.
So in our episode today, we're going to look at some principles that we see from Joseph's life, what enabled him to remain so faithful to God in very difficult circumstances. And then we're going to share an acronym that hopefully will help your son remember these principles, and then give some suggestions about how you can make it a really special event where you really discuss these things.
Okay, so honey, give us a little background on Joseph for those who may not know the full story, just getting him to Egypt at least.
Yeah. So Joseph is one of many brothers, the sons of Jacob, and they've been promised the promised land, and Jacob's family had 4 mothers, so as you can guess, that didn't work very well, and there was a lot of fighting between the brothers. Joseph was a favorite brother of Jacob, which wasn't good. He showed some partiality there because his mother had been the favorite wife of Jacob. Long story short, the other brothers end up taking Joseph captive, selling him as a slave to Egypt, and they figure he's either died or he's out of the picture forever. But fast forward a number of years, there's a famine in the land of Canaan. The sons of Jacob, the brothers of Joseph, go to Egypt to buy grain.
Mm-hmm.
And Joseph is now in charge of Egypt. He's second in command to Pharaoh. And the whole story, we don't have time to go through, but it's just one divine miracle after another about how Joseph reaches that point.
Good.
But
yes.
he is faithful to God through all kinds of situations and circumstances and tests and trials. And that's the really inspiring part of Joseph's story.
Yes, good summary. And he didn't start out, though, when he got to Egypt, second in command, did he?
Oh, he was a slave.
He was a slave. Okay, so that's what we're going to start out looking at. And his master's name is Potiphar. If you go to Genesis 39, verse 4, it says, "And Joseph found grace in his sight," meaning his master Potiphar. "And he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand." Well, you don't do that with a slave unless you really trust them. So Joseph is showing himself very trustworthy, and he is serving his master faithfully. He's a servant, a true servant of God.
We're not told in the Bible what length of time is encompassed in this verse, but clearly there's a considerable amount of time, because no master is going to put their slave in charge of their household within a few weeks or months or probably even a year or two. So Joseph not only was had that servant mentality. He wanted to be a good servant, but he stuck to it, right? And he continued to be a good servant. And that won the confidence of his master Potiphar over the period of time.
Yes, it did. If you go to Genesis 39, verse 6, so Potiphar probably went on trips, right? Business. And it says, and he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had. He didn't even know what all he had, because he put Joseph in charge of everything and he trusted him. Except he knew the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. So if we just stop there on goodly person, what is that talking about?
Well, in the King James, that usually means that the person was good looking.
Okay. And that's not something we want to focus a lot on, because can we help the way we look? Not really. But I think it's also more than that. What else are you thinking?
Well, there's the inward beauty of character.
Inward handsomeness in this case.
Of course, in God's eyes is what makes a person truly beautiful. But it's also what entrusted him to Potiphar, his master. His physical appearance alone, of course, would not have enabled Potiphar to trust him. He recognized that this was a young man here whose character was just as beautiful and trustworthy as his physical appearance.
Yes, that's good. We're going to draw one other little point from that, but we'll get to that later in the acronym. But, okay, so things are going well, right, for Joseph. He's being trusted and things are going on along great. And all of a sudden, Satan's going to try to throw a really big wrench in things.
Well, it probably didn't happen all of a sudden, but Potiphar's wife ends up being infatuated with Joseph, and she begins to make overtures to him. Obviously, when Potiphar is gone, her husband he was a warrior, general of the army, so he's out fighting wars. And it brings us to a crisis point here where she pretty much throws herself on Joseph, and he refuses to be unfaithful to
Potiphar,
his master, and to God. And he makes it very clear that this would be sin and wickedness for him to go along with what she wanted to do.
So let's just step into the conversation right there. In verse 9, it says, there is none greater in this house than I. Joseph, this is Joseph saying this. Neither hath he, Potiphar, kept back anything from me, but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? So he is a pure man. Praise God. There's not a lot of those left in the world.
No. And the next verse brings out the fact that she didn't just ask him once. This was repeatedly over and over and over. And his response was always the same. No, I'm not going to do this.
Exactly. And yeah, it comes to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, he hearkened not unto her, to lie by her, or to be with her. And then in verse 11, it says, and he fled. So probably got a little bit more
intense.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And so he flees. And the point here that we're trying to make is that Joseph flees from evil. And we want to teach our sons to do the same thing.
To see and recognize it for the danger that it really is. The devil does a really good job of convincing us that sin isn't really that dangerous, that it's really not that bad, and it's okay to experiment a little bit with this or that. You don't see that attitude in Joseph's life. He had made up his mind from the very beginning that there were some things he would never, ever do. And when things got to the point where he recognized that he had to run away, he did.
Praise God. So then there's another point, and this kind of kept reoccurring. If you look in 39 verse 2 and verse 5 and 21 and 23 and chapter 45 verse 8, you hear this. The Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with him. The Lord made him to prosper. And 45 verse 8 says, So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. That's later on when he meets up with his brothers. So what I take from that is that Joseph knew how to direct his praise to God. And he didn't take credit for the way he prospered. And he did prosper in Egypt. But he gives the credit to God where it needs to go.
Yeah. And again, that steadfastness of character, decision. He had a lot of things that could have discouraged him in his life, but he had made that decision that he was going to serve God no matter what, which is the choice that we want to bring our sons to, and that we believe you want to bring your son to as well, that I choose to serve God and be obedient to him no matter what the consequences are. And in Joseph's story, those consequences were pretty steep, weren't they?
Oh,
He's
yeah.
thrown into prison, could have easily been killed by Potiphar when his wife claimed that he had attacked her, but he's thrown into prison, and he sits there in prison for several years before he's finally released.
Right.
But he had made that decision.
Yes, and he could have thought that God had forsaken him and start blaming him, but we don't get record of that. He keeps praising God and being faithful wherever he found himself, whether it's as a slave, in prison. What happened in prison? He becomes...
He basically becomes steward of the prison as a prisoner. Mm-hmm. And you can imagine him walking around with all of the keys to the cells, right? And the jailer just trusted him implicitly.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay. So then another point we want to bring out of Joseph's life is found in chapter 41, verse 39. And it says, "And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, For as much as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art." So Joseph had wisdom, but let's catch them up as to where we're at in the story here.
Well, after Joseph has been in prison for several years, King Pharaoh has a dream, and it disturbs him. He knows it's important, or he believes the gods are trying to communicate something to him, but he doesn't know what it is. And it turns out that one of the king's servants had been in the same prison as Joseph for a time. Joseph had correctly interpreted the dream of this servant, and now when the Pharaoh has the dream, the servant remembers, oh yeah, there was a guy named Joseph in prison. He interpreted my dream, and he tells Pharaoh, perhaps he can interpret your dream for you. And so that brings us to the day where Joseph is suddenly yanked out of prison and brought in front of Pharaoh with the command, probably a command to interpret his dream for him.
Yes, and he does. And so God gives Joseph wisdom. And that is a huge gift to have, and a gift we want our sons to have as they're living in the world. They need wisdom, and it's a promise they can have it just as much as Joseph did.
Yeah, and Joseph, when he's communicating with Pharaoh, he's very clear that this wisdom is not his own wisdom.
Yes.
It's wisdom from God, much like Daniel in his story
Yes.
and his friends. You know, when Daniel interprets Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he is very clear that this is not because of my wisdom or my strength. This is because the God in heaven has communicated something to you, and he's using me to do it. And so, you know, keeping this attitude and mindset is a great safeguard against pride.
Yes.
And all other kinds of evils that come in the wake of pride. We want to instill this in our children, in our sons, very much so.
Yes. Thank you for that. So then the story of Joseph, there's lots to it, and it keeps on marching, and the famine comes, and his brothers need food. So they come to Egypt to buy food. And I'm trying to figure out where we're at in the story. Chapter 42, verse 18, it says, "And Joseph said unto them the third day, This do and live, for I fear God."
So Joseph recognizes his brothers immediately, but they don't recognize him. And so he remembers, of course, how mean they had been to him. And he wants to know if they have changed in their character at all. So he puts them through a number of tests. We probably don't have time to go through all of those, but he really puts them through the ringer.
Yes.
To see how they'll react. And eventually, Joseph extracts from them the information that their father is still alive. Joseph's father is alive. And so is Joseph's full brother. These were all half-brothers. But he had a full brother named Benjamin, and Joseph really wanted to know if Benjamin was still alive, and he wanted to see him. So he asks his brothers if they will, or he tells them, commands them, I will not give you more grain unless you bring your younger son Benjamin. That way I'll know you're not telling a lie, that you're telling the truth, that you have another brother.
Right. And through all of this, you think, maybe, is he being harsh? Is he trying to get back at his brothers for all the mean that they did to him? I would say no. He's more wanting to see if they're changed men. And I don't know, would you say they're changed men because of this or before this? I don't know.
Well, I think the experience that he puts them through probably finishes the job.
That's a good way to put it.
Changing their character. At the end of the story, Joseph brings his entire family, his brothers, their families, his father, he brings them all to Egypt. And that's how the Israelites get to Egypt. And then, a couple centuries later, there's the Exodus. But he wanted to know if they were safe to bring into Egypt and to live under his care there. If he had put them through these tests and realized these guys are just the rotten scoundrels they've ever been, he probably would have sold them the grain and they would have never even known that their brother was alive.
Maybe.
But because he recognized that they were truly sorry for the way they had treated him many years ago and that these were not the same guys that he had known, there is a great reward for them as well.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. They get to come and live there and have plenty of food and the whole family.
So he ends up having compassion on them as well.
Yes.
When he could have exacted revenge, he actually extends grace and mercy to them.
Yes, and this is not a point to gloss over. In chapter 45, 1 and 2, then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him, and he cried, Cause every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren, and he wept aloud. And this is just a point I want us to linger on for a moment, because sometimes in our culture today, we make our boys or men feel like they aren't men if they cry and show emotion. And that's just simply not true. I think we could all agree that Joseph was a real man, and he cried, and he had compassion and tender heart towards his brothers.
The point that goes along with that is that real strength is not just physical, but it's that compassionate forgiveness.
Yes.
And extending mercy as well.
Yes. And I like that you said strength, because that leads us right into our acronym, which we thought might fit guys, and they would appreciate this word.
So this acronym is hopefully a way that will help your boy easily remember the basic points from Joseph's story. And as he maybe wears the sweatshirt or the ball cap that has this word on it, he can be reminded, even if other people don't know what it really is referring to, he can be reminded, God has called me to be what? Strong. That's right.
Strong. And so whether you walk through the Bible study, kind of like we just did with your son, you sure can. It'd be great. Or you just give them this acronym and explain that it comes from Joseph's life. Here it is, the S of strong.
That stands for servant. Mentality. Now, we've looked at Joseph's life, but of course the greatest servant the Bible talks about is Jesus Christ.
Right.
And so we're not talking about be like Joseph, we're really saying be like Jesus. And Jesus was clear to his disciples, if you want to be the leader, so to speak, then a leader is one that serves.
Yes. And in these respects, Joseph was being like Jesus. So yeah, he was a servant, and the T is that he was trustworthy. Potiphar put everything in his hands. He didn't even know what all he had. Same with the prison. People trusted him because Joseph was trustworthy. And we want our sons to be trustworthy men as well. And
trustworthiness alone, not that it's the most important out of all of these are all important, but this one alone will distinguish a person in today's world.
Yes.
Because the world is not trustworthy, and most people have a price, whatever that price is, at which they can be sold, and their faithfulness can be sold, and their trustworthiness.
Exactly. Okay, so that leads us to our next letter, which is R. And we're using the word respectful. You think Joseph was respectful?
Well, he wouldn't have risen to where he did in a foreign society if he hadn't been respectful of the people there.
Oh, yeah. No way.
That is probably a lesson he had to learn. If you read the early chapters of his life, he was probably a little bit of a brat. He knew he was the favorite, and you get the idea that he wasn't always real wise in how he interacted with his brothers, and maybe there wasn't the respect there that there should have been. But he learned some lessons too.
He sure did, and that's really a good point, because God is working with Joseph as well, right? Not just, here's my star student, I'm going to send him to your land, and he is not perfect human, but he's learning and growing as well. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
But
the O,
yes,
kind of encompasses everything, but he was an outstanding character. And what do we mean by outstanding character?
well, not just physically, although the Bible does refer to that. That it sounded like he was a good-looking young man, but that he was also morally sound. It comes out real clear in his interaction with Potiphar's wife. He's morally strong individual and spiritually pleasing to God.
This is one of the themes that we see repeatedly in the Bible, and that is the organic unity of who we are as human beings. So there's the mind, there's the body, there's the spiritual aspect. And, in the Hebrew mentality, all of these aspects of what make us a human being, they're all part of an indivisible whole. And you can't separate out one aspect, say the physical, and still expect to have a strong spiritual experience. They go together. And so you look at all of these, or at least I should say most of the Bible heroes that we think of, and they recognize, and you can see in their lives, that they put emphasis on trying to develop all of their faculties and aspects of who they are. Probably Daniel is one of the clearest examples. But I think the same was true with Joseph as well.
Yes. Okay, so that brings us to our N in the acronym STRONG, and we're saying that means no to evil. Teach your sons to be able to say no. And that's a great boundary to have in your life, and a godly one in regards to moral things as well.
Yeah, and don't underestimate the importance of simply saying no, even out loud, as simple as that, and saying it with force. There have been, I believe there have been studies, put myself on a limb here, not having looked this up, but I don't think you need a study to know this. If you're facing a temptation, responding quickly and forcibly with a no, and if you need to say it out loud, no, I'm not going to do that, it puts you in a direction, in a trajectory in which it is easier to continue resisting what should be resisted.
Good point.
So
helps you remain faithful and saying no.
And this needs to be communicated to our children, whether they're boys or girls. When you come across a temptation or when one comes to you, the way you initially respond is going to play a tremendous role in how you finally respond.
Yes.
If your initial response is, let me think about that, maybe it's not so bad, you've already set yourself up to giving in or making the wrong decision.
Great point. Great point. Okay, and our last one, G, what do we have?
Give credit to God.
Yes. And I see that through the story of Joseph. He feared God in a good way, the good kind of fear. He reverenced God and gave him credit. And you'd just be foolish not to, because we can't do anything good on our own. So that's another important aspect of what we want to teach our boys to be like as men in the world. And
because he gave credit to God, God was able to bless him and to use him in tremendous ways.
Yes.
That's not the only reason. We shouldn't give credit to God just so we can get something in return.
Oh, no.
But if we're unwilling to give God the credit in our lives, he can't use us like he could otherwise.
Oh, for sure. So there you have it, the acronym STRONG, and you can put it on something special as well. Like we talked about in the last one for your daughters, a hoodie or a hat or a mug or something, and present it to your child that they can remember these words, and they can come to mind easily when they're out in the world and need to stand strong.
And it's very easy online now to find, vendors that'll make even a single piece of clothing that's customized just how you want it.
Yes.
With the artwork or words. So it's not difficult to do.
No. And again, honey, I have overwritten in our podcast. We're not going to get to near all of this. This is really, the sky's the limit for what you could do with this. But hopefully some principles you can be raising your sons with, and also that you can have a special talk or conversation over dinner, some special dinner somewhere. But so just what can we leave them with? Can we jump to our Proverbs idea?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
So there just happens to be 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs. And we've both done this
multiple
times.
Mm-hmm.
Just read one chapter a day. And that'll take you through an entire month, maybe plus a day or two, depending on which month you do it. But, the Bible talks about having the mind of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get the mind of Christ? Well, we have to start thinking the way Christ does. And he's explained in the Bible how we do that. Mm-hmm. And the book of Proverbs is one of those wisdom books.
Yes.
Which reveals to, it's focused not so much on doctrine and theology as it is just on practical advice for day-to-day living.
Wisdom, right? Get wisdom. So the book is written by King Solomon, and he made a lot of mistakes in his life, and he records what he learned. And so it's chock full of wisdom nuggets. And even his mother, does she have some writing there?
There are indications that some of it is her teaching to him.
Mm-hmm, which would make sense. He's writing it. He learned from her. They both made mistakes in their life, and they're passing that along. So you could have your son read the book of Proverbs multiple times in different times of their life and focus on different parts of it, getting wisdom, or focus on it with business advice.
Talks about money a lot.
Focus on the book as for marriage advice. Go through it with that lens in mind. Anyways, just another idea to help your son be able to stand in a world that's difficult today.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. You can find us online at pathwaytoparadise.org. If you want to watch these, go to YouTube and search for Families of Faith podcast. Keep building your family of faith every single